The massive diplomatic vessel of the Galactic Council hung in space like a silver leaf catching starlight. Its smooth, curved surfaces reflected the distant stars, making it look more like an art piece than a spacecraft. Inside, 12 of the most powerful beings in the known universe waited with growing unease. Ambassador Trell watched the meeting chamber's main screen with all 4 of his eyes. His scaled hands tapped nervously on the polished table as the small human ship approached. It was tiny compared to their vessel, barely larger than a transport pod. The ship's simple design puzzled him. It had none of the usual diplomatic markings or ceremonial decorations that other species used for first contact. "Most unusual," said First Speaker Blue, their tentacles shifting colors with concern. "They send only one small ship. Where is their fleet? Where are their honor guards?" "Perhaps they don't understand proper protocol," suggested Representative Gold, their crystalline form catching the room's light. "They are, after all, quite young as a species." Trell kept quiet, but something about this approach bothered him. He had studied human history ever since they were discovered. Their rapid rise from a primitive planetary species to a spacefaring civilization was unprecedented. Most species took thousands of years to achieve what humans had done in barely more than a century. The human vessel came to a stop at exactly the recommended distance for first contact, not an inch too close or too far. Perfect positioning. This wasn't the work of amateurs. "We're receiving a transmission," announced the communication officer. "Audio and visual." "Display," ordered First Speaker Blue. The screen flickered to life, showing the interior of the human vessel. A single human stood there, wearing what appeared to be a simple blue uniform with minimal decorations. Their ship's interior was surprisingly plain, functional rather than ceremonial. "Greetings, representatives of the Galactic Council," the human said with a slight bow. "I am Admiral Ross of the United Earth Fleet. On behalf of humanity, I extend our warmest welcome." Murmurs filled the chamber. An admiral. They had sent a military leader for first contact. This broke every diplomatic tradition in known space. "Admiral Ross." First Speaker Blue's tentacles shifted to formal patterns. "We are surprised. We expected a full diplomatic delegation." The human's face formed what Trell recognized as a smile, but there was something else in those eyes, something that made his scales tingle with ancient instincts. "We believed a more personal approach would be appropriate," Ross replied. "In our experience, real friendship begins with trust." A fleet of ships might have seemed intimidating. Trell noticed how the human chose that last word carefully. Intimidating. As if a human fleet could intimidate the Galactic Council. Yet something in the Admiral's tone made Trell wonder if that's exactly what they had considered. "A bold choice," said Representative Gold, their crystal form vibrating with interest. "Though it leaves you quite vulnerable." Admiral Ross's smile remained unchanged. "Does it? We prefer to think of it as extending a hand in friendship, though I should be clear about our position from the start." The Admiral straightened slightly, and despite being just one human on a small ship facing the combined power of the Galactic Council, their presence seemed to fill the screen. "We come seeking friends," Ross said, each word measured and clear, "but we're prepared for enemies." The chamber fell silent. Trell felt his scales rise slightly. In all his years of diplomatic service, he had never heard such a direct statement during first contact. It was neither a threat nor a boast. It was simply a fact, delivered with the calm certainty of someone stating that space is dark or stars are bright. First Speaker Blue's tentacles had stopped moving entirely, a sign of shock in their species. Representative Gold's crystalline form had dimmed slightly, but Admiral Ross just stood there, still wearing that same gentle smile, waiting for their response as casually as if they had commented on the view. And in that moment, Trell realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. He just wasn't sure yet if it was the beginning of a great alliance or something far more terrifying. The most powerful words ever spoken in the universe had just been delivered with a smile. 3 days after first contact, Ambassador Trell paced in his private chamber aboard the Council ship. The walls displayed a calming scene of his homeworld's crystal forests. But even that brought him no peace. He had spent every moment since meeting Admiral Ross reviewing human history files, and what he found kept him awake at night. The door chimed softly. "Enter," he called out, his scaled hands clasping behind his back. First Speaker Blue glided into the room, their tentacles showing patterns of mild annoyance. "Ambassador Trell, you requested an emergency council session. This is highly irregular." "What I've discovered is also highly irregular," Trell replied, moving to his data terminal. "The council needs to understand what we're dealing with." The humans. First Speaker's tentacles rippled with amusement. They've been nothing but cooperative. Their Admiral Ross has agreed to all our standard treaties without argument. Trell's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of stress in his species. "That's exactly what worries me. They're agreeing too easily. Have you looked at their history? Their public records show a species that developed space travel rather quickly. Impressive, but not concerning." "Not concerning." Trell pulled up a series of images on the room's main display. "Look at this. 100 years ago, they could barely fly in their own atmosphere. 50 years ago, they reached their moon. Now they have ships that can match our best vessels." First Speaker Blue moved closer to the display, their tentacles shifting to a pattern of consideration. "Fast progress, yes, but it's not just the speed," Trell interrupted, switching to another set of images. "Look how they achieved it. Every major advancement in their history came from conflict or the threat of conflict. They don't just solve problems. They turn solutions into new tools, and then they find ways to turn those tools into weapons. Many species develop military technology. Not like this." Trell brought up more files. "They turned their first space rockets from weapons into exploration vehicles, then back into better weapons. They took medical research and found ways to use it for defense. Even their entertainment technology gets converted to military training tools." First Speaker's tentacles had stopped moving entirely now. "You believe they're dangerous." "I believe they're unique," Trell said carefully. "Every other species in the Council developed technology in a relatively straight line. Medical science stayed medical. Transportation stayed transportation. Humans, they look at everything sideways. They see possibilities we never imagine. You're suggesting we deny them council membership?" "No," Trell shook his head. "That would be even more dangerous. I'm suggesting we need to understand them better before we proceed. That message Admiral Ross gave us wasn't just a diplomatic greeting. It was the most honest warning we've ever received." He brought up the recording of the first contact. Admiral Ross's face filled the screen, speaking those now famous words. "We come seeking friends, but we're prepared for enemies." "Listen to how they said it," Trell pointed out. "Not as a threat, but as a simple fact, like describing gravity. They've built their entire civilization on being ready for anything, good or bad." First Speaker Blue's tentacles had shifted to a deep shade of concern. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting," Trell said slowly, "that we're dealing with a species that can turn anything into an advantage. They're not aggressive by nature, but they're always prepared for conflict. And most worryingly, they do it all with a smile." The room fell silent as the recording played again. "We come seeking friends. That's what makes them truly dangerous," Trell concluded. "They genuinely want peace. They honestly seek friendship. But they've built their entire society around being ready for war at a moment's notice. And they've become so good at it, they don't even see how terrifying the combination is to the rest of us." First Speaker Blue's tentacles had turned a pale shade of worry. "I will convene the council immediately." As they left, Trell looked back at the frozen image of Admiral Ross's friendly smile. He wondered if humans understood that their greatest strength wasn't their technology or their adaptability. It was their ability to be completely sincere about wanting peace while being absolutely prepared for war. The Council's Science Exchange Center buzzed with activity as alien scientists gathered around a simple metal table. At its center stood a human engineer named Jack, his work uniform covered in grease stains. He was showing them what humans had done with the faster-than-light drive designs they'd received from the Council's welcome package. Ambassador Trell watched from the back of the room, all four eyes fixed on the scene. The Council had provided basic FTL technology as a goodwill gesture, expecting humans to take decades to understand it. Instead, after just 3 months, they had not only mastered it but changed it in ways that made Trell's scales itch with worry. "So anyway," Jack said, pointing at the holographic display, "we noticed that if you reverse the field harmonics and add a pulse modifier here," his finger traced a line across the diagram, "you can create a focused wave of displacement energy." Chief Scientist Glow, a being of pure energy contained in a special suit, moved closer to the display. "But that would turn the drive into a—" They stopped suddenly. "A weapon, yeah," Jack nodded casually. "Pretty powerful one, too. Could probably take out a small moon if you wanted to. But that's not the cool part." He switched to another diagram. "See, once we figured that out, we realized we could use the same principle to make the drives way more efficient for normal travel." The room had gone very quiet. Trell noticed how the alien scientists had all taken small steps back from the table. But Jack didn't seem to notice. His enthusiasm focused entirely on the technical details. "By applying the same force distribution concept," Jack continued, "but tuning it down about 99.9%, we can get nearly twice the speed from the same amount of power. We're calling it the Wave Rider Drive." "You," one of the younger scientists spoke up, their crystalline form vibrating with confusion, "you took a peaceful transportation technology and turned it into a weapon, just to make it work better as a drive system." Jack looked up from his diagrams, seeming genuinely puzzled by the question. "Well, yeah. Best way to understand how something works is to figure out all the ways it can be used. Once you know how to break something, making it work better gets a lot easier." Trell stepped forward. "And your people do this with all technology?" "Pretty much," Jack shrugged, wiping his hands on his already stained uniform. "It's just good engineering practice, you know. Understanding the extreme cases helps you handle the normal ones better. Plus," he grinned, "it's always good to know what your tools can do in an emergency." The alien scientists exchanged worried glances. Trell noticed how their body language showed increasing signs of stress. But what worried him most was how natural this all seemed to Jack. The human didn't act like someone revealing dangerous secrets. He talked about weaponizing faster-than-light travel with the same casual tone someone might use to discuss their breakfast. "Don't worry," Jack added, apparently finally noticing the room's tension. "We're not planning to use any of that stuff. It's just theoretical research. Though," he paused thoughtfully, "I guess it's good to know we can if we ever need to. Oh hey, want to see what we figured out about your shield technology?" Several scientists quickly made excuses to leave. Trell stayed, watching as Jack enthusiastically launched into another explanation. The human's words from earlier echoed in his mind. "Best way to understand how something works is to figure out all the ways it can be used." In that moment, Trell understood something crucial about humans. They didn't develop weapons because they wanted to fight. They developed weapons because, to them, understanding how to break something was an essential part of understanding how to make it work better. They had turned warfare into a form of research and development. As Jack continued his cheerful explanation of how they had improved more council technology, Trell quietly updated his report to the council. The humans weren't just prepared for enemies, as Admiral Ross had said. They were constantly preparing, turning every piece of knowledge into a potential advantage, all while smiling and talking about peace. And the scariest part, they seemed to think this was perfectly normal. The emergency alert woke Ambassador Trell from his rest cycle. All four of his eyes snapped open as his room's display filled with urgent reports. The swarm, a hostile species from the outer rim that even the council feared, had just attacked one of the new human colonies. Minutes later, he rushed into the council's emergency chamber. First, Speaker Blue's tentacles were flashing warning colors, while other council members showed various signs of distress. "How bad is it?" Trell asked, taking his seat. New Eden Colony, Representative Gold's crystal form pulsed with worry. Population 50,000. The swarm hit them with 3 high ships. Trell felt his scales tighten. 3 high ships was enough to overwhelm most civilizations' defenses. The swarm hadn't survived this long by being gentle. They stripped planets bare of resources, including the inhabitants. "We must send aid immediately," First Speaker Blue announced. "The humans are new to space warfare. They don't know what they're dealing with." A communication officer interrupted. "Incoming message from Earth Command." Admiral Ross's face appeared on the main screen. The human looked calm. Too calm for someone whose colony was under attack. "Greetings, Council members. We appreciate your concern regarding the situation at New Eden Colony." "Admiral," First Speaker's tentacles moved in urgent patterns. "We are preparing a response fleet. The swarm is not an enemy to take lightly." "Thank you," Ross interrupted politely. "But that won't be necessary. We're handling the situation." The chamber fell silent. Trell leaned forward. "Admiral, you don't understand. The swarm uses biological weapons. Their ships are living weapons. They—" "Yes," Ross nodded. "We've analyzed their attack pattern and technology. Fascinating approach to space warfare, actually. Our engineers are quite impressed." The Admiral's casual tone made several council members shift uncomfortably. "We've already launched our response." "Your response?" First Speaker Blue's tentacles froze. "What response?" The 7th Fleet was nearby. "They're engaging the swarm now." Ross checked something off-screen. Actually, they'd been engaging them for the past 20 minutes. The council members exchanged shocked looks. Representative Gold vibrated in disbelief. "You engaged the swarm with 1 fleet." "That's all we needed," Ross replied simply. "Though I should warn you, we're about to try something that might look a bit concerning. Please maintain a safe distance from the conflict zone." Before anyone could respond, another alert lit up the chamber. The tactical display showed energy readings that made no sense. The swarm ships were still there, but they weren't moving. In fact, they seemed to be. "Are they eating themselves?" Representative Gold asked in horror. "Not exactly," Ross explained, still maintaining that unnervingly calm demeanor. "We noticed their ships were biological in nature, so our science team modified some of our medical nanites. The swarm's own aggressive biology made them particularly vulnerable to this approach." Trell watched the tactical display as the massive swarm ships literally dissolved from the inside out. The humans hadn't just defeated the swarm. They had turned the species' greatest strength into a weakness. "The situation will be resolved shortly," Ross continued. "We're collecting samples for study. The swarm's biological technology is quite advanced. Our medical division is especially interested in their rapid cell regeneration capabilities." The council chamber remained silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't just defeated one of the most feared species in known space. They were already thinking about how to use the swarm's own technology for peaceful purposes. "Oh," Ross added, almost as an afterthought, "please inform any other potentially hostile species that Earth's colonies are not suitable targets for invasion. We would prefer to maintain peaceful relations with all species," but he smiled that same calm smile from their first meeting. "We will respond to threats appropriately." As the transmission ended, Trell realized that humanity's first words to the galaxy hadn't been a diplomatic greeting. They had been a warning that no one had taken seriously enough. They truly did come seeking friends, but they were absolutely prepared for enemies. And now the galaxy was learning exactly what that meant. 1 week after the swarm incident, Ambassador Trell stood in Earth's primary research facility, watching through a protective barrier as human scientists worked. They moved with practiced ease among samples of the defeated swarm technology, already turning their enemies' weapons into medical breakthroughs. "Remarkable progress," said Dr. Wells, the lead researcher, as she guided Trell and First Speaker Blue through the facility. "The swarm's rapid cell regeneration has helped us develop new treatments for several diseases. We might even be able to regrow lost limbs soon." Trell noticed how his fellow council members' tentacles twisted with unease. The same biological weapons that had dissolved 3 swarm-high ships were now being modified to heal humans. It was exactly what he had warned them about. Humans didn't just defeat their enemies, they learned from them. "And the captured swarm technology?" First Speaker Blue asked carefully. "Oh, that's been fascinating." Dr. Wells smiled, leading them to another section. "Their biological ships were incredibly efficient. We're adapting some of their principles to create better food production systems. Could solve world hunger in a few years." They passed a window looking into another lab. Inside, engineers were taking apart what remained of a swarm ship's living armor. "The defense applications are promising too," Wells added casually. "Though of course we hope we never need those." First Speaker's tentacles flashed warning colors. "You're still developing weapons." "We develop everything," Wells corrected, stopping at a large display screen. "Defense, medicine, agriculture. It's all connected. The swarm taught us that. They were so focused on using biology as a weapon, they'd never sought its potential for other things." The screen showed diagrams of swarm technology being adapted for various peaceful uses. But Trell could see how each peaceful adaptation could be turned back into a weapon if needed. The humans weren't trying to hide this fact. They simply didn't see why it would bother anyone. "There's something I don't understand," Trell said slowly. "You defeated the swarm in minutes, using technology you developed almost instantly. Why didn't you show this capability before?" Dr. Wells looked genuinely puzzled. "Why would we? We're not here to frighten anyone. We just want to trade, learn, and make friends." She paused, checking some readings on a tablet. "Though I suppose now everyone knows what happens if they attack us." A young researcher interrupted them, excited about some new discovery. As Wells excused herself, First Speaker Blue turned to Trell, their tentacles showing patterns of deep concern. "They turned the most dangerous biological weapons we've ever seen into medical treatments," First Speaker whispered. "In a week." "No," Trell corrected, his 4 eyes watching Wells enthusiastically discuss healing procedures with her team. "They did both at the same time. The same research that let them defeat the swarm also gave them medical breakthroughs. That's what makes humans different. They don't see a divide between creation and destruction. It's all just knowledge to them." Through another window, they watched a human researcher gently tend to a plant grown from modified swarm biological material. The same hands that had helped design weapons that dissolved living ships were now carefully nurturing new life. "The most terrifying thing," Trell continued, "isn't that they can defeat enemies like the swarm. It's that they can do it while barely interrupting their peaceful research. War and peace, creation and destruction. It's all the same to them, just different applications of the same knowledge." First Speaker's tentacles had turned pale. When Admiral Ross said they were prepared for enemies, "They weren't threatening us," Trell finished. "They were trying to be honest. They genuinely want peace. They're just prepared for anything else. And they don't even realize how terrifying the combination is." Dr. Wells returned, still smiling warmly. "Would you like to see our agricultural research next? We've made amazing progress with crop yields." As they followed her, Trell understood that this friendly scientist, excitedly talking about feeding hungry worlds, was just as capable of designing weapons that could dissolve ships. And to humans, that wasn't a contradiction. It was just being thorough. Ambassador Trell stood at the window of a human emergency shelter, watching a scene that made all 4 of his eyes widen in disbelief. A small human child, no more than 8 years old, was carefully wrapping a blanket around an injured alien refugee. The alien was from a world that had been attacked by pirates, and the humans had taken in survivors without hesitation. "Are you warm enough?" the child asked the alien. speaking slowly and clearly in the council's common language. My mom says your species needs higher temperatures than we do. The alien, a crystalline being whose form had been damaged in the attack, glowed softly in response. Yes, little one. Thank you. Trell watched as the child smiled and pulled out a datapad. Look, I learned about your planet. The crystal forests are beautiful. When you're better, will you tell me about them? Before the alien could respond, an alarm blared. The shelter's screens lit up with warning messages. The pirates had followed the refugees. They were attacking the human defense perimeter. Trell expected panic. Instead, he saw something remarkable. The child's mother, who had been helping other refugees, calmly walked over. Sweetie, stay with our guest. Keep sharing those pictures of their homeworld. She smiled warmly at both the child and the alien, then turned to leave. Mom's going to help keep us safe, the child explained to the worried-looking alien. She's really good at that. Want to see more pictures? Through the shelter's windows, Trell watched as the mother joined other human defenders. Their movements were precise, professional, clearly military trained. Within minutes, the pirate attack was neutralized. No enemies breached the perimeter. No refugees were harmed. When the mother returned, she had the same calm smile as before. She checked on her child and their alien guest, asked if they needed anything, then went back to helping other refugees, as if nothing unusual had happened. Trell requested an emergency meeting with the council. Hours later, he stood before them, playing recordings of what he had witnessed. Watch carefully, he told them, showing the scene in the shelter. The child shows genuine care for an alien's comfort. The mother maintains a peaceful, nurturing environment. Yet the same mother steps away to efficiently eliminate threats, then returns to caregiving without missing a beat. First Speaker Blue's tentacles moved in patterns of confusion. Why is this significant? Because, Trell explained, I finally understand what makes humans truly dangerous. It's not their technology. It's not their adaptability. It's not even their military capability. He paused the recording on an image of the child showing pictures to the alien while combat happened outside. What makes humans dangerous is their ability to be absolutely genuine in both peace and war. That child's concern was real. The mother's care for refugees was real. And her combat efficiency was equally real. Humans don't pretend to be peaceful while preparing for war. They are genuinely peaceful and genuinely prepared for war. At the same time, all the time. He showed more footage. Humans treating injured aliens with gentle care, while defense systems eliminated threats in the background. Scientists excitedly sharing medical breakthroughs while their labs developed weapons. Engineers teaching alien children about space travel while maintaining defense grids. Most species choose between being peaceful or being dangerous. Trell continued. Humans never made that choice. They simply decided to be both, and they see no contradiction in this. They can comfort a child while fighting a battle. They can heal with the same knowledge they use to harm. And most importantly, they do it all with complete sincerity. The council chamber was silent as they watched the recordings loop. Peaceful scenes alongside efficient combat, healing alongside protection, creation alongside destruction, all performed with the same calm competence. That, Trell concluded, is why their first words to us were the most terrifying in the universe. Because they meant those parts equally. They genuinely come seeking friends, and they are genuinely prepared for enemies. The council chamber was packed for the final vote on human membership. Representatives from every major species had come to witness this historic moment. Ambassador Trell noticed how they all kept a careful eye on the human delegation, led by Admiral Ross, who sat quietly at the center of the chamber. Before we vote, First Speaker Blue announced, their tentacles showing formal patterns, Ambassador Trell has requested to share one final observation. Trell rose from his seat, his scaled hand steady as he activated the chamber's main display. The recording of humanity's first contact began to play. 3 months ago, he said, we heard these words. We come seeking friends, but we're prepared for enemies. At the time, we thought it was just a diplomatic greeting. We were wrong. He paused the recording on Admiral Ross's smile. These were the most terrifying words ever spoken in the universe, not because they were a threat, but because they were absolutely true in both parts. The display shifted to show scenes from the past 3 months. Humans teaching alien children, sharing medical technology, helping rebuild worlds damaged by the swarm. Then it showed their military response to the swarm, their defense of refugee shelters, their efficient handling of pirate attacks. Look at their actions, Trell continued. When they say they come seeking friends, they mean it with absolute sincerity. They share knowledge freely. They help without hesitation. They welcome aliens into their homes. Their children play with our children. They celebrate our differences and actively try to understand our cultures. The display showed more scenes. Human scientists excited about alien biology, engineers collaborating on new technologies, families hosting alien refugees. But Trell's voice grew more serious. When they say they're prepared for enemies, they mean that with equal sincerity. They turned the swarm's biological weapons into medical treatments. They adapted our peaceful technologies into defensive systems. They maintain combat readiness while healing the sick. Their children learn about alien cultures while their parents maintain defense grids. Admiral Ross watched calmly, that same gentle smile on his face that he'd worn during first contact. Most species choose to be either peaceful or dangerous, Trell said. Humans choose to be both, simultaneously, all the time. They don't see this as a contradiction. To them, being prepared for war is part of maintaining peace. Being capable of violence is part of protecting gentleness. He turned to face the council directly. We're not voting to accept humans because we trust them. We're voting to accept them because they've shown us exactly who and what they are. Their first words to us were the most terrifying in the universe because they were the most honest. The chamber was silent as Trell concluded. They come seeking friends. That is absolutely true. They are prepared for enemies. That is equally true. And they will never, ever change either part of that equation. The vote that followed was unanimous. Not because the council fully trusted humans, but because they understood them at last. As Admiral Ross stepped forward to accept membership, his smile remained exactly the same as it had been during first contact. "Thank you," he said simply. "We look forward to a long and peaceful friendship with all species of the council." He paused, then added with that same calm sincerity, "And we remain ready to help defend that peace, should the need ever arise." Trell watched the other council members try to hide their unease at those words, but he finally understood. Humans weren't trying to be threatening. They were simply being honest about who they were, a species that had mastered the art of being genuinely peaceful while remaining absolutely prepared for war. And those first words, "We come seeking friends, but we're prepared for enemies," would echo through the galaxy for generations to come, reminding everyone that humanity had never once lied about what they were. They had told the universe exactly who they were from the very first moment. They were the most terrifying words in the universe because they were the most honest.